All right. Adam, on the hottest day of the year in the UK, you're joining us on the podcast. Really do appreciate you coming over to the studio for this.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Fortunately, my office is just 6 minutes away, so it was easy.
You walked it?
I walked, yeah.
Okay, very good. So it was a 2-hour train journey for me, and I was a little bit apprehensive that there would be some rescheduling needed in case the trains melted. But actually, everything was fine.
I did have a few meetings actually moved today. Yeah, because of that, people didn't make it to the city.
But I'm not coming into London. It's too hot. I don't blame them, but like we're dressed for the occasion. So we've got the summer vibes. But yeah, no, I appreciate you coming here. So Airspeed in a sentence, for those that don't know, what is it?
We're really focusing on revenue execution. So how can we make your go-to-market team execute faster, go from an idea or an intent to do something to doing it?
And you and your co-founder Devang, you came from DeepMind. So what was it like made you kind of like transition into like AI GTM from DeepMind? What did you see there in your conversations? Like, how did this come about?
Yeah, no, good question. And we get this one often, as you can imagine. Well, so Devang and I, we met at DeepMind. We're working on the Gemini team before it was called Gemini, but kind of when we really scaled LLM training at DeepMind.
Yeah.
I think we were really in a fortunate position, to be contributing and seeing kind of where AI is going. And we left 2022. It feels like, not that long ago, but it's funny kind of looking back. Back then at Google, it wasn't really sure how quickly we're gonna, put this into product, how quickly we can iterate on it. And we knew, the potential, we knew kind of where things were going. We could see that, AI went from being able to understand 1-2 sentences, to being able to understand a whole conversation and a whole kind of suite of conversations. And so we wanted to build it in the space, build with users and iterate fast.
Did you see a gap? Like, I guess, how connected were you to like sales and what was the gap that really you saw that said, okay, we've got to build this company now?
Yeah. So there's a gap and there's also a long-term kind of vision behind the company. I might start with a gap where, especially GTM, sales conversations, it's a lot of unstructured data that the team is connecting, but it's data that's unique to your organization. When right now, all the public data analysis and everything that's been kind of commoditized, everyone can go and, send a Cloud agent to analyze Reddit posts or something like that and get that information. But it's really sales conversation where you're learning about, and customer conversations where you're learning about what problems people come to you with, how do they view compared to the competition? How are they kind of solving those problems right now? And it's really data that should be driving most of the company's strategy. I think that's one thing. We wanted to take this data because most organizations were just sitting on this data, not doing really anything. We wanted to take this data, analyze it, make sense of it, and then turn it into action and make it kind of useful for the whole organization to both automate a lot of the toil and maybe simple workflows that they do, but also automate some of the more higher leverage workflows around, setting product strategy, setting go-to-market strategy. Do we go into this vertical, into this geo, etc.?
But when you launched as Glyphic, right? But recently rebranded, I think this year, right, to Airspeed. You did ask me, I don't know if we were rolling at the time, have I memorized the questions or how much preparation I've done? Something that I can admit to not doing is looking up, like, what does Glyphic mean? Like, I don't even know if it's a word, right? How did you land on the name sort of Glyphic? But then what changed to, like, why have you become Airspeed?
Yeah, two things really that led us to the rebrand. I think one thing is people didn't know how to pronounce it. And I think you're an example.
Did I pronounce it right?
Incorrect, actually.
Really?
So it comes from hieroglyphic.
Glyphic.
And so it should be Glyphic. But we were seeing people pronounce it in various different ways, spelling it in different ways. Yeah. I think that was one reason. The other reason also is kind of when you look at the last 4 years, we chose the word Glyphic to kind of encapsulate, generative intelligence, language, kind of all that stuff, which is a lot around making sense of that data that your organization has, getting these insights in hands, etc. But kind of as the product was developing and as kind of our customers were pushing us kind of into new directions, we saw that people were using it in different ways, and especially around execution and actually getting the work done. And so we wanted to move more from that kind of intelligence language type of name to something that, has some significance around speed, around motion, around getting work done. So it was these two reasons, kind of 50-50 really, but we're very happy about how it turned out.
In the old days, and when I say old days, I'm probably talking like 2022, 2023, like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like a rebrand project, you know, for a well-funded company, this could be several months, right? Now with AI, and I don't know how much AI was actually sort of used within the rebrand, I'm sort of curious to know, but it feels like this can be done kind of faster, quicker, potentially without agencies. Maybe you can just share a little bit about your sort of process of the rebrand there.
Yeah, so I mean, it still took several months.
Yeah.
So it's not something you can do very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But there's definitely things that can be done faster, and we definitely took some shortcuts. We wanted to make sure that we've got the right name, and so we did actually work with an agency on that. We worked with Lexicon Branding, kind of really think about, you know, where we're going, what we want the name to signify, etc. It was a really good experience as well for us to kind of think long term and think about the direction we're going. So we really enjoyed that experience, and that led to the final name. In terms of everything else, you can speed that up a lot with AI these days. So around, for example, website migrations, all that stuff, we kind of moved from, you know, the early 2020s tech stack to the 2026, 2027 tech stack. And so website fully vibe coded right now. Everyone has access to it. We're owning it. We're not, you know, using a different service. We can be much faster around updating it, putting all the product information on the website, etc. So that definitely was sped up, but we're also happy with where we landed because we feel like we've got the, you know, the tech stack that's ready to.
What did you use to vibe code the website?
Everything really. Yeah. I think right now, kind of everyone can use whatever they want. It's really just the code, which is the context that's needed. But we moved our previous website using Claude Cowork into a new framework, and then kind of the whole team contributed to that. It was mostly me and Chat, our product designer, who, you know, also really enjoys you know, branding and thinking about colors and thinking about all that stuff.
And how do you, like, is it like measuring brand or measuring the impact of the rebrand? Like, how do you know if it's success or not? Like, how do you measure that?
I mean, we're still early on into that. It's been just a few weeks, but we've been looking at several things. I think the team internally really kind of, you know, lined up behind the name. They all like it. They kind of they like the direction we're going, what it means, and also that it's a simple name. When they're on a call, they don't have to do like GLYPHIC. And so I think that definitely helps. Plus, most of our customers and partners really kind of congratulated us. They like the rebrand. They kind of get why we did it. I think there's a few old timers who, you know, like the nerdiness of the old name and kind of the significance. Not everyone kind of you know, would see through that, but yeah, that's kind of always the collateral damage. I think there's other things that, you know, it hits you with, you know, website authority. We migrated our domain and all that stuff. It's not easy, but it's, you know, sometimes you need to take these kind of costs.
And what's the failure, do you think, of like give a human a dashboard, sort of like generation of tools?
Yeah, so kind of when you look at the go-to-market tech stack over the last 20, 25 years, it's been mostly systems that collect data, aggregate data. That was kind of, you know, the CRM era and kind of a lot on top of that. And then maybe recently more around dashboards, insights. But there's still a huge gap between, you know, knowing what to do, or at least having the data to kind of figure out what to do, and doing things. And that gap is not closed by, or hasn't been closed by any of those previous tools. But it's that kind of going from, you know, wanting to do something to actually doing it is what, you know, what affects your revenue, what affects your pipeline, all this stuff. And so that's the gap that we wanted to close.
And what are your thoughts like? Because I would imagine like every GTM space pretty crowded, right? And pretty much like every B2B software company is calling themselves, I would imagine, an AI GTM tool now, and has .ai, and maybe there's a bit of AI washing. Some are probably, you know, AI native itself. But your take on sort of AI native versus like AI washed, and you know, what does most of the GTM market sort of get wrong here?
Yeah. So, I mean, AI washing, agent washing, there's a lot of that kind of happening right now, especially kind of as the legacy tools kind of try to show that they're doing something in the AI space. I think the AI nativeness is really around two things. One is you really need to build the infrastructure of the system so that it's accessible to AI and agents, and so that kind of anything that you normally were able to do in a system, kind of clicking things around, setting up, you can do it. An agent can do it behind the scenes. I think that's one thing around kind of building that architecture of the system, of the tool, so that it's accessible. The other thing is around AI actually doing things and not just executing very deterministic workflows. So there were things in execution happening before, for example, sequencers, etc., where you would maybe set up a sequence of 5 emails, get a list of people, and those would get sent kind of over the next 2 weeks. But it was very kind of hard coded. There was no kind of intelligence happening or kind of decision making happening at different steps. AI native tools are doing a lot of that decision making behind the scenes for you as well.
So then is it like naturally obvious then for you to compete against an AI wash tool? It's easier than maybe versus another AI native tool. Would that be true?
Yes. Yeah. So I think people, and that's a change. I would say that happened maybe over the last a year, maybe, or I saw it mostly in kind of H2 last year when people kind of really realized they need to start investing in this direction, and they're reconsidering their tech stack and looking at things.
So what would your advice be if you're to those GTM platforms that are AI washed? What would your advice be to them?
Advice, that's a good one. I mean, basically you need to be very happy with throwing half of your code base away, really rethinking the whole direction of the product, the pricing, the infra behind, and everything. You need to be open to doing that.
On pricing, how does it work for Airspeed? Are you usage based?
We're still mostly seat based.
Yeah.
We're innovating on kind of several different directions, and we didn't want to innovate both on how do we deliver the value and the pricing, but we're looking at consumption pricing as well. I think that's kind of where the world is going, or a combination of seed-based and consumption-based pricing. But for now, seed-based.
Is that something you're speaking to Manny about?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Very good. What's the most wrong thing that you hear people say about AI and sales today?
I would say most probably that AI is kind of replacing salespeople. We've heard something similar in, for example, software engineering. AI is replacing coders, but I think it's just a misunderstanding of what the ultimate role of that position is. For software engineers, it was never just write code. It was understand a problem and figure out a way how to solve it in some way, using a computer. I think for salespeople, it's engage prospects, understand their pain points, understand kind of what they're trying to solve, and then see whether your solution can help them solve that problem. That's going to stay here. We're selling mostly to upper mid-market enterprises, and I don't think that's going to that kind of buyer-seller relationship is not going to get replaced. But it's the kind of the content of the work that's kind of being shifted, and I think it's getting more purified in the sense. I don't think salespeople kind of when they were thinking of sales, they were thinking of, okay, I'm the person who updates CRM, who does this type of research, or mostly drafts emails. I don't think they'd really thought about themselves as doing that. A lot of that will now be taken care of by AI, and they're going to focus more on the main kind of content of their position.
Can you walk us through like a workflow that Airspeed's agents kind of run like end to end behind the scenes, like before a human touches anything?
Yeah, so there's a lot. We're kind of really building in that execution layer, and we think that people will want to execute from a single system and kind of manage the whole customer journey from the first touch points all the way to sales, customer success, renewals. But kind of one example there for mid-funnel is around how do you manage your deals? When you look at your kind of typical mid-market rep, they might be managing 20 plus deals at the same time, but really cognitively they can focus on the top 5, 6 with the highest momentum. And then there's always deals kind of that are stalled, not moving, and they're not giving the attention that these deals need. What we could be doing behind the scenes is actually understanding, okay, this contact has gone quiet on us? What's happening? What are maybe some relevant things that happen to the product, or what are some of the recent customers that we just closed won that we can mention when we reengage this whole deal? And we could be doing that for the rep behind the scenes, so that the rep focuses on their top deals with the highest momentum that they want to close as soon as possible, and we're doing that kind of boring work behind the scene on the other deals. That's one example.
I'm just curious, I guess, from a personal level. So let's say a prospective customer has gone quiet. Like, how often would you sort of like recommend that you re-engage, that you continue to try this person if they're not responding?
On a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to, if there was conversation happening, you want to make sure that you're still there in the conversation. The conversation was happening because they were trying to solve a problem. That problem most probably didn't go away.
Yeah.
Maybe there's just other priorities that came up, etc. And so you want to be you want to be there for the next weeks.
Yeah.
Be there every week.
I'm not naming names, but I've got one particular customer in my pipeline that I had an amazing call with like 2 months ago, and it's been almost quiet ever since. But I'm going back on a weekly basis, and I'm sure she's going to come back round.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And just thinking again about just like the change or your shift, from DeepMind, where you're working in sort of like developing frontier AI, to now like running a company, building product to hundreds of customers. What's something that you maybe had to unlearn in the Airspeed world?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. Going from a more research environment to a product environment. I think one of the big ones is around performance and kind of how do people evaluate performance. I think in research you very much focus on peak accuracy, peak performance in the best kind of environment. How does this model perform, and what can we get from it? Users, when they use your product in their daily workflows, they use it in so many different ways that kind of you can't even imagine, in different verticals, for different things that you didn't imagine beforehand. And so they're kind of the reliability across the different use cases, and kind of I think reliability is much more important than peak performance. And I think that's a big shift that kind of we had to unlearn. We had to kind of learn how we want to monitor this reliability. How do we evaluate new models on that as well? Because we've had cases, the kind of the big models that are being released kind of all the time. They are being released all the time, and people want to use them as soon as possible. But it's not always true that in all the use cases that we use the models for, they're better performing than the previous generation of the models. And so we had to kind of figure out, when do we upgrade the model behind the scene? How do we evaluate it, etc.
And you're a first-time CEO?
Correct.
With Airspeed. So what's something that you enjoy the most about this, and maybe what's the hardest thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a engineer, researcher by background. So I really like building products, talking to users, seeing the value that we bring. I think that's the most satisfying part of the job. I think on the flip side, as a CEO or as a founder, you need to let go very often of things that you like, to be doing. So, I like building things, but I had to let go very early to focus on other things. And you're kind of always, you figure out how to do something very well. And at that point, you need to let it go, give it to someone else, and kind of start pushing the frontier for the company. And I think that sometimes can get a bit tiring. Yeah.
With respect to the enjoyment of speaking to customers, when you kind of first sort of rolled out the product, I don't know, let's say the first 10 customers, what was something that they needed that you didn't expect?
Good question. I'm going to respond to a different question.
Yeah,
but what surprised us is when we rolled out the product to our customers and to our users the first time, they started sharing the outputs and screenshots internally. And then there would be like, people from the whole company, commenting on things and really engaging with the product and kind of trying to push it in different ways. And I think that was really interesting to see. In terms of functionality, I think one thing that we didn't think of building so deep was around coaching. People and teams are really interested in how do I coach my reps? How do I coach my team? And how do I get all the data and kind of tools within Airspeed to do that? And I think that was something that we were really focused on, the data and execution part, not so much on coaching. How can we support one-on-ones, etc. And I think that's a direction that our customers pushed us into a little bit.
And so I guess sort of moving into like how you sell it, like there's a bit of an irony perhaps of like selling, you know, GTM to GTM, like a sales tool to sales teams, because, you know, to help with their sales motion, because also if that's the process, they should be judging you on how you're selling to them. So maybe what can you share about how you do sell to like other sales teams, and maybe like, are there any stories or anecdotes of those that you're selling to who've been sort of judging you and the feedback that they've shared?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, selling a sales tool to sales teams, you know, it comes with a lot of kind of funny situations. I remember, you know, early on in the product, the LLMs were not so clever yet, and we didn't build all that context that was necessary, and we were selling a sales tool to sales teams. And then models actually getting confused, you know, who's the seller, who's the buyer here. I remember that was 2023. We rolled it out for the first time, and we had these kind of funny situations happening. Our buyers, our prospects are definitely judging our sales process because they want to see the best sales process. And that's something that I'm, you know, trying to instill into all our hires, that we need to show the best of how can consultative sales be done? How can you do a proper discovery? How can you make sure that you know, when you come to a demo, you're as best prepared as possible? Kind of all these things. What's nice is that our reps really enjoy selling the tool, because when I look at our ranking of top users, they consistently rank as, you know, one of the highest ranking users of Airspeed. So I think that's nice. Plus, they really get the point as well of what we're trying to solve. Normally, with buyers, we usually take them on an AI journey, kind of trying to understand what they're using right now. What are some of the inefficiencies? What are they trying to solve? What kind of data they have? People are kind of comfortable with doing different things. Some people are really just interested in getting visibility at first, and then looking at some of the automations later. Some people are kind of really want to get, you know, those extra 2%, 3% of their productivity gains as well, and they want to go kind of all in. That kind of depends on a situation.
You raised the Series A this year. I think it was announced, so not too long ago.
Correct.
So congrats for that. Well, what is genuinely difficult sort of right now with the Series A sort of behind you?
For me as a founder? So, well, I think one thing that was super difficult was around scaling the team. So it was a big focus right after we fundraised. We announced, we closed it early in the year. We announced it just recently. Was kind of very, very quickly double the size of the team. We were pretty stretched towards the end of last year, where kind of everyone was doing everything. And what I wanted to get in place is a team where I've got very clear owners for everything, that for the major chunks of work that need to be done. So I think that was one thing. The other thing right now is around kind of positioning, marketing, and kind of being out there for people to understand what we're trying to solve, how we're different from the existing legacy tools, but also from some of the new entrants. Because I think we're kind of approaching the problem in a very unique way. I don't think there's any other company doing the same thing, even though from a buyer's perspective, there's a deluge of GTM tools, and they're kind of trying to figure out what to do. So I think that would be another thing. And then most recently as well is around the decisions that people are trying to make around build versus buy, which, you know, a lot of people started building their own things on top of legacy tools because they realized, okay, AI can do this, my tools can do this. How can I kind of bridge this gap? And they started building their own workflows on top of that. But I think that's more of a temporary thing because, the legacy tools are still here. They're not really moving anywhere. I don't think there's strong players, you know, in the middle that would just capture most of the market. So kind of people are kind of trying to bridge that with their own work. What we're trying to tell them is that, you know, AI is moving so fast. Even if you build something yourself right now, there's going to be so much maintenance costs. You're not going to have that talent internally to be kind of maintaining and building it all the time.
Yeah.
I think
that's the sad thing that gets me, because I probably, like many, I'm super excited about the capabilities of what I can finally build now, right? I couldn't, last year or a few years ago. So then I look at my tech stack and I'm like, occasionally I'm like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can build a replacement for that, and I get to a certain point, maybe 40%, but it looks pretty good. I'm like, oh, it looks better than the tool we're using. But then it's that maintenance part and the ongoing, and it's like, well, actually, I'm running a different business. I don't have all this time and the resource to fully productize this, and I think that's the challenge. So you get carried away a little bit by that, but maybe there will be some things that will come into productization.
Yes, yeah. I mean, so I think it's going to be I think there'll be a balance of people building things internally for themselves where it makes sense, but I think there'll be still a lot of software doing the core tasks that need to be done in a company, which kind of go-to-market sales is definitely a core task.
What have you guys, I mean, you mentioned the website, didn't you? But like, is there anything else specifically that you've like vibe coded rather than bought?
Customer success dashboards and kind of all that information around usage, where we vibe coded that ourselves in Lovable, actually. And then we pull all that information around, the usage, the trends. We're looking at costs and token usage and all that stuff, kind of bring all that into a single place.
Yeah, I was just picturing some LinkedIn clickbait here that Adam Liska says customer success is dead because of AI or something like that. I won't quote you on that.
Exactly. I mean, and I don't think it's a long-term solution, but it was something kind of as we're building the CS function, we wanted to get that in place quickly. Actually, previously we had a Google Colab. That was our CS dashboard that we wrote internally, kind of moved it to something a bit more flexible. We'll see kind of where we take it next.
And you as a CEO, have you built like multiple agents that you're managing? And how many do you manage, if any?
Yeah. So I'm kind of trying to push the product kind of to the limits. So that's kind of building agents internally around, who are we talking to? What are the objections? What's coming up? We're building internally also playbooks within Airspeed, who are we selling to, geos, verticals, the pain points. And I'm really interested in seeing kind of what's changing. Because for example, that Claude, I'm going to build it myself with Claude Code. That kind of really appeared only a couple of months ago. And kind of looking at these trends. What I'm also trying to do is actually then bring that into a single view for me as a CEO, where I try to take all the outputs that I'm getting from Airspeed and also kind of unifying them into a single kind of daily brief myself. So kind of trying to push it to the limits. What's interesting is as we kind of scaled, my usage of Airspeed kind of moved from being an IC, closer, working the deals, to being, the CRO, CEO of the company. And I view now the product in a slightly different way as well, and kind of pushing a lot of that kind of leadership functionality.
Well, I guess switching a little bit then away from sales side of things, but maybe onto financial management and token usage, right? So like, I don't know what you can share or but around how much you spend on tokens, but how do you manage that and how you put that in the P&L? Obviously, we've seen, I'm sure you've seen, some of the stories kind of out there where companies are blowing through their token spend, in quarters rather that for what they budgeted for the whole year. So how do you manage that?
So I think there's two different use cases. One is tokens used, to do work internally. Yeah. So around coding, around, doing all the reporting that we do in operations, in finance, quarterly board reporting, etc. Where it hasn't been a problem yet for us. Kind of, we do have a, pretty good budgets. I'm pushing every function within the team to be using AI as much as possible, because I think it's also, we're in an interesting situation where, we're a relatively large company already. We're 35 people. We've got all the functions in place, but I think we've got an opportunity to really rethink of how do you need to build company in this time and age? How much can you automate? But still with kind of strong ownership in place, but kind of how can you automate a lot of the operations work that we do? So the sales, clearly, coding as well. So kind of, I think that's an interesting kind of opportunity for us as well. And I think a lot more companies will be thinking about that, how they need to change. I think that's one thing around token spend in the product. That's another thing, and that's definitely kind of going up a lot. And that, especially kind of as we make the agents more flexible, being able to do more things, which definitely kind of eats into our margins. And we're thinking around kind of how we should address this. And I think moving towards consumption-based pricing will be the way.
Something that surprised me last month. So I took a group of 30 SaaS founders to Portugal. It was very nice. Comporta, highly recommend. And obviously we were just talking about AI for the whole weekend. GTM was a very important and interesting topic for everybody. But the surprising point was that almost everyone was a skeptic on one hand about AI GTM tools. And maybe because there was no clear examples within that specific group as a data set. And like ultimately they were just continuing to do what they've always done because it works. What would you say to, like, if you were there to that group, right? Because in my mind, I was like, well, clearly the world is shifting to AI. You know, companies are somewhere on their journey to becoming AI first. But why is this group of 30, which is a representation perhaps of, you know, part of the market, very skeptical about, you know, AI GTM tools and reluctant? I would have thought it might have been one of the first areas where you start to experiment.
Yeah. No, so I mean, there's definitely, you know, areas within GTM that, you know, are amenable to very quick kind of AI wins. I think maybe the problems, I wasn't there, so I don't know the context, but I think I can see two things where, you know, this could have gone. I think there was a lot of discussion around AI completely replacing salespeople, which was, you know, nonsense. And I think a lot of people are kind of pushing back against that. And when they see AI in GTM, AI in sales, they kind of think of this and they're like, yeah, it's never going to work, which is true. Then I think the second bit is that it's also, I think it's underappreciated how difficult go-to-market space is to apply AI. It makes a lot of sense for AI to start with in coding, not only because, you know, you've got technical people using it, always kind of exploring new tools and kind of trying to be at the frontier, but it's also the context that you have in coding is really just that one code base, which in the end is not a lot of text. And it's for a normal company. And it's something that, you know, a model can understand very quickly and kind of act on easily. When you think about go-to-market, you know, organizations can have thousands of conversations a day and kind of making sense of that, kind of putting all the workflows to act in that space actually much more difficult. And so it's going to take a while, I think, for the kind of magic experiences to happen or for them to kind of develop. I think there's been a lot around, you know, being able to summarize calls, get all the information, get aggregate insights from all the conversations. I think we're there, but kind of the more complex use cases where, you know, as a coder right now, you really kind of think that you feel like you're just orchestrating things. You set the direction and you let the agent to do things. I don't think we're there yet in GTM with that experience, but it's coming, and it's going to be coming to GTM. It's going to be coming to operations. It's going to be coming to all the functions within companies.
So you mentioned that it's nonsense that potentially AI is going to be or within sales teams, like fully autonomous sales teams. So do you think that will ever happen?
So yeah, let me maybe qualify that. I think on the lower end, kind of simple transactional sales, definitely AI will kind of automate that end to end. When you think about kind of upper mid-market enterprise sales processes where there's, you know, so many people involved, it's actually at the beginning, it's even unclear what, you know, the potential buyer is trying to solve. I think there AI will help a lot, but it's not going to kind of replace the whole process, replace humans in the whole process.
And I know, like, I would say, I don't know if love-hate is the sort of right word, but we're still, I guess, relatively, we're in a bubble, right? But you see some people, like, they'll happily like call out, oh, this LinkedIn post was, you know, written by Claude, and then, you know, they'll give you a bit of hate for that, right? Then there'll be people that are very open. So, well, actually, like within my process, you know, I formalize my thoughts. I write a LinkedIn post. I like share it with Claude. It will polish it, etc. So you've got the human in the loop. And I think, like, I'm off the world, and I certainly sort of like do that, right? Where I think it's an advantage. Like Claude AI is an advantage here. And then similarly, to the point I'm getting to is that I think like right now, because we're early, like some people will be very resistant to, let's say, receiving a sales call from an AI agent and say, oh, it's a terrible experience, I don't want to speak to an agent. But then others maybe that are more open and will be like, oh, this is quite cool, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want, like, have you ever had a call from an AI agent? Do you sit in the bucket of this is quite cool and I'm going to have this conversation and like test it out? I'm just curious about your experience there.
Yeah, I mean, I did receive calls from AI. It's, I mean, I would engage just to kind of play with it, but at the same time, I don't think this is the best use case because I think you're just going to annoy people. You can scale this a lot. You're going to saturate. It's illegal in some jurisdictions as well. And so I don't think that's going to be the perfect use case. But as a buyer, actually, coming to a website, seeing that there's a product that could potentially solve my problems, and instead of waiting, let's say 2 hours to speak to the next AE that's available, to the next SDR, and being able to speak to just a voice bot or a video bot that can kind of take me through it, answer some of the questions for me to even kind of understand and qualify whether I want to engage with this company. I think that's a use case that makes a lot of sense, and I think people will be getting used to it. I think it's a journey as well, and kind of buyers and sellers are both getting used to AI replacing some of the touch points as well. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think there'll be a process where people will be getting increasingly more comfortable with it.
Do you think the future GTM stack sort of like collapses or sort of reduces rather? Because I would imagine like many companies that they would have like quite a lot of like GTM tools, but I guess in this day and age, and looking ahead in the future, do you see this kind of like reducing just to like, one or two?
I don't think it's going to be one or two.
Yeah.
But I think the experience will collapse. So instead of you having to actually go through 7 tools and kind of keep them open, I think you're going to have one tool. We're building Airspeed to be that tool, but there's going to be one tool where you can orchestrate everything. And that tool will either own and do some of those things, and some of those things is going to delegate to the other tools that you've got in your tech stack. But it's going to integrate directly. So I think that's kind of where we're heading.
So looping a little bit back to, the Portugal example, but so there are founders that are watching this, that are listening to this, if they're not watching on YouTube, that are just running their sales teams in the traditional way. What would you say to them? What step should they be taking now? Like, should they be thinking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're running it in the traditional way, there's so much that they can do. I think that the first one, if they don't even have Claude or ChatGPT for the team, I think that's the first thing. But I don't think that's, if you think about founders and kind of early stage companies, I think they're all kind of doing these things already. But I think one of our customers, for example, Fermat Commerce, what they do within the companies, they do regular hackathons, kind of day or 2 days. Now I don't know whether they run it monthly or so, where everyone is tasked to kind of explore AI tools for their own workflows and see how far they can push the automations for some of their workflows. And I think that's something that every company, every person, every team lead should be thinking about. Kind of, how can I make the space so that people can do experiment and see, and if they don't want to experiment, how can I push them? Because even I talk to a lot of founders and I do hear that sometimes even the engineers sometimes don't want to use Claude Code for coding because they feel like, okay, I'm not going to trust the output. And it's sometimes even, gets ridiculous. And sometimes you do need to push the team a little bit.
And you mentioned, like, when you raised the Series A, one of the first things you did was hire more humans. Are your VCs telling you, or are you sort of like mindful of, well, as an AI native sort of business, actually, we need to be leaner, we need a higher revenue per head count? Like what are the VCs saying, and what are your thoughts around, I don't know how many people, I almost said Glyphic Airspeed needs, in 12 months time?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we will still need people. Yeah. And so we needed to hire just so that we've got that ownership and owners of the different functions. Funnily enough, we also mostly, well, actually not true. I was going to say we mostly grew the go-to-market function, but we grew both product and go-to-market and also a bit of operations. But yeah, I think the benchmarks are getting increased. So you would want to have more output per employee, but you still do want to have these very well-defined teams that own a specific use case, whether it's CS, etc. But I think what we're all getting pushed to, and what kind of we should be thinking about every day, is how can my existing team do more? And I think that's kind of what's happening. We're not, even in coding, we're not replacing engineers. There's still so many problems that need to be solved. And if anything, AI in coding kind of made shipping much faster, and so it's a faster game now, and so you can't be left behind. You need all the humans to move even faster than your competition. So I think we're in this situation. It's I remember hearing, I think it was now I don't know who mentioned this, but hearing how in the 70s, before people used Excel, they would have to do all these things manually, and now that they have Excel, they do the work in 2 hours and then spend the rest of the day just relaxing, not doing anything. That didn't happen. I think you still need, you still need to kind of work as you worked always, because there's just more to be done and you can move faster.
Oh, it's sad to hear that. I'm looking forward to the 4-hour work week.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hopefully it's coming. I know you mentioned that you haven't done a lot of podcasts, but I'm sure you've done a lot of interviews, and certainly around the Series A announcement. What's maybe the one thing that you wish people would ask you about Airspeed, but they haven't?
So I think I didn't cover that at the beginning, but kind of the way I think about Airspeed is, how can we make the whole company run more efficiently? And so the concept of, programmable companies, and how can I encode all the knowledge, all the knowledge and workflows that happen within a company in a single space that kind of humans and both humans and agents can use. I'm really kind of excited about this direction, and we're building Airspeed with kind of this in mind. We're starting with GTM because we feel like that's where most of the interesting data is, but we do affect other areas as well: product roadmap, product direction, etc. And so I think there's going to be move towards, how can I get all the context that the company generates into a single place, so that it's accessible, but also so that it can be iterated on. So whenever there's a new day, new conversations, new problems that we solve, we kind of improve this kind of constitution of the company or something like that. And that's a topic that I'm quite excited about.
Awesome. Well, Adam, thanks so much for being a guest on the show today, taking that 6-minute walk here in the incredibly hot heat. Maybe if that ice cream van is still around, you can grab one on the way back to the office, but really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm happy you had AC here.
Yeah, very much so. Very much. Me too. Thanks very much.